Hey there, how's everybody doing? Now, do you remember last week the two harps that we seen that I've been working on that are, well, I'm just going to say they're less than perfect. I tried my hand at 3 new harps this week in the same twisted design, but a little bit more even. And I used 2 different styles of reeds on these. I used the same style of blue tempered spring steel on this one, while on the other 2 I used an old bandsaw blade. I sheared off my trigger design and then went ahead and treated them, and they came out pretty cool looking. Let's go ahead and take a closer look and see what I got going on this week. Okay, now taking a look back at my first harp that I completed, here it is. The same twisted design with the big trigger. And the finish on it kind of came out, let's say, less than ideal. Here's the second harp that I had made. Finish came out a little bit better, but the trigger, that's not great. It's sticking out way too far. Didn't like it. So I took this same pattern and I developed my triggers a little bit further. Here's one of my newest 3 from this week. I ended up, trigger is much further in. Found out very quickly that I don't like my old style of trigger where it sticks out much past. That hits your lip. That kind of cuts you. I don't like that. Not a good design. Here's a little bit more refined of a trigger shape. Here we have a bent trigger. And my trigger bend is much tighter there. It ends about where the frame arms end. My gaps are much better on this one than the other ones. Here's one of the old ones, uneven big gaps. Here's one of the newer ones, much more even, tighter gaps. And here it is compared to the first one. So, and this one here, this is blue tempered spring steel 0.025, and it stayed the same color after I finished it. It stayed blue. And I also ground a much better knife edge on these. You'll see in one of my other videos that I actually cut myself trying to remove a reed out of here to replace it with or to recut the channel, and it actually cut me. So these reeds, as far as from here to here, are pretty sharp, about like a knife. And then I went ahead and I dulled them as you go to the trigger in any area that might contact the mouth. I feel it's much safer that way. This one here we have the newer spring steel one I made. And here we have one, this is made out of a bandsaw blade. I went to my local machine shop and got a bandsaw blade used for free. They just gave it to me, and I sheared off the back side of it, which is pretty close to spring steel. Then went ahead and tempered it, and it came out, it started out a gray color, but once it finished out, it came out a dull purple. It's kind of cool. It goes right along with this dull gold or tan color of the harp. I like this finish. The trigger on this one, I went a little bit different. I came at it at a slight angle. It seemed to lend itself decent for playing inward and outward, and we'll be playing them later. And here's the other one. This is made out of bandsaw steel as well, bandsaw blade. Not quite as even, but it doesn't play horribly. I think these 3 harps play much better than my first harp, which is very low. Too low to really be usable. And oh, there is a little bit of clinking that I get out of them. And I thought at first, I'm like, oh, it might be my decks are too close to my reeds. But that's not the case. The case is that I'm getting some clinking. If we look where I cut my reed in, see how my reed's kind of at an angle? That means my reed is going back and forth across them decks at an angle instead of straight up and down perpendicular. That's where I'm getting the clinks every once in a while when playing fast. So this bunch of harps has taught me that I have to be really on point with my channels. All 3 of them, one side slopes down. I think when I'm filing it, I'm putting more pressure going toward the right-hand side as it's facing away with my file, and that's what's resulting in this. So on my next run of harps, I'm really going to pay really good attention at getting my reeds in there, not just straight along this plane with the embouchures, but perpendicular along this plane, straight with the plane of the harps and not being at that little angle. So every week, and I think I'm going to be making a video about my progress with harps. Every week, I'm going to be analyzing my harps, critiquing them, and seeing what I can do better. Because they don't play horribly, but they don't play awesomely. This sound is much better out of it. We'll get to that in a second. But let's go ahead and let's also take a look at some bands that I've been making. I was busy yesterday. I bent a whole lot of harps. Now, here we have this same style of twisted frame. I'm going to call it a duck's beak. I'm getting much more even in my bending. Hear this one. This one came out very nicely for a twisted frame. Where I have this one. This one came out decent as well. So my bending technique's getting better. But one thing I'm finding, and you'll see this in one of my next videos on evening up jaw harp frames, because a lot of these were bent imperfectly and then I had to even them back up, but I'm getting better at fixing those mistakes. But there's a lot of tweaking around, and I spent a lot of time getting these decks, these embouchures, back to being even, back to where I want them. So what did I do? I decided that I would start bending them. Instead of twisting them, I'm bending them on the diagonal now, and they're coming out much, much nicer. Much easier to even out. They just come out much sweeter when I bend them at an angle. And here, this one is bent at the same radius as my duck beak harps. And then I bent some that were smaller, shorter, tighter. I think they're more streamlined when I make them a little bit smaller. And I'm interested to see how these harps are going to turn out. I think these are going to be playing much, much better. They're bent on a diagonal, which is easier to work with, easier to true everything up than taking the frame and twisting it. And I know a lot of other makers. Let's take a look at a few other harps. Not mine. These are not my harps. These are Zalagi harps. He bends his on a diagonal, so I'm thinking that my diagonal ones might end up working a whole lot nicer. Here's some larger ones bent on the diagonal compared to my smaller. There it is. Compared to my smaller harps. So I think that's going to be what I'm going to do in the future. Start going and bending harps more diagonal. And you can see my marks. These are where I marked my outside bends. This one's not quite as even, a little bit irregular, but I might be able to work that. But many of them came out very, very nice and very even. And that, I think, is the direction that I'm going to take my harps. I've got a pile of 13 harps here that I've got to put reeds in. But let's go ahead and let's get a listen on this week's run of harps. Okay, so let's go ahead and let's do a little comparison here. We're going to compare my old harps from a week ago to my newer harps, my 3 new harps we just looked at from this week, and then we'll compare my new harps from this week to a toy harp and a couple of good harps. Let's get a listen on my first harp I made a week ago. Not great sound. Pretty low. Better since I fixed the trigger, but pretty low, and trigger sticks out. It's just too far. It hits you in the corner of your lip. Check out the second harp. Trigger sticks out way too far. It keeps hitting me in the lip, and this one will actually, if you play it for long enough, will actually begin to draw blood on the inside of your lip. And pretty low sound. I thinned down the reed, and it lowered the tone quite a bit. Let's get a listen to the spring steel one from this week. The sound on it, it's pretty loud, and the sound on it, it's not bad. The one thing I don't like about this harp is the clicking. If I pluck it very aggressively, if I'm just plucking it slowly, individually, it's not bad, but once I get to working this harp quickly, there's a little bit of clicking. It's because my reed's not mounted in there perfect. It's kind of at an angle. So my reed, instead of traveling straight up and down perpendicular with the harp, it's traveling slightly offset. So even though my decks, my embouchures are spaced correctly, because it's cross-cutting across there, I'm getting a clicking in one corner. So that's going to be something that I'm going to look out for on my next harps, is just take the extra time, make sure it's absolutely straight. And they look straight before I crimped them, but my channel isn't absolutely straight. So when I crimped it, my reed may have been sitting in there straight to begin with. Once I crimped it, it sank down till it pretty much bottomed out and was uneven. That was the spring steel one. Let's give a listen to my two ones made out of bandsaw blades. I do like to look at them. They have this weird purple hue to them. Here's the one with the longer loop trigger. Not very breathy, and a little bit higher because I kept my reed thicker. The thicker the reed is back here, the more rigidity it provides, because there's just more material to keep it rigid there, kind of like having a spring that's thicker. This trigger style, it doesn't play bad at all. I don't mind that one. Now this one with the shorter loop trigger, I tried doing a shorter trigger. It's recurved, almost like a little teeny Morchang trigger. And my reed, I thinned it down because I knew that I'd get a higher tone. I wanted to get, or lower tone. I'm an idiot. Not a ton of volume. It does have better volume. And these harps, all three of them, play better than my first two harps. And the spring steel one is definitely louder. It has the tightest gaps of all of them. Kind of that crackly sound. So between these three, they're not bad. There are some things that I'm definitely going to be changing on my next harps. Now let's compare them. First, we'll compare them to some toy harps. Here we have a Hobby Lobby mouth harp. All three of these harps, I would rate them at better than a Hobby Lobby mouth harp. The one thing about the Hobby Lobby mouth harp I'd have to give the advantage to is the reed is crimped in there absolutely straight, so I can play this harp pretty quickly and no clinking because the reed's moving perfectly perpendicular. So good job to the mouth harp. They're better at crimping it, cutting in channels, and doing reeds than me, but not quite as much. Let's go ahead and just compare them right now. There's the Hobby Lobby mouth harp, spring steel harp, much louder. Bandsaw blade, a little bit extra output than the toy harp. The other bandsaw blade. I would rate them, I like them better than the Hobby Lobby mouth harp. Only thing I like about the Hobby Lobby harp is the reed is, they're better at cutting them in. They probably have fancy machines that do them for them, and they've been doing this longer than me. Now let's go ahead and we're going to compare them to what were these harps? These were the Whitlows. There's the Whitlow with an uncracked reed. Spring steel, my spring steel one. Bandsaw blade. This one has a particularly stiff reed because of how wide it is. And bandsaw blade. And we'll even put it up against the Whitlow that has the cracked reed. It still hasn't, I played it quite a bit, it still hasn't broke all the way through yet. My sound is louder than these two Whitlows, but I don't think it's better. It's louder, it's more crackly, and I can't play it nearly as fast inward as outward as I can the Whitlows. And these Whitlows, they're tuned. These are both tuned to E flat, or that'd be F sharp. Yeah, something like that. E, F sharp, or D sharp, or something. But I would still say Whitlow is a better harp, and it should be. He's been making them longer than I have, and he knows how to tune them. I'm not really tuning my harps yet. Somewhere down the line, I'm going to be able to tune them, but not yet. Now they're just going to be whatever they are. Let's go ahead and let's compare them to a Zalagi Chancellor, one of my favorite harps, the second harp I ever bought. Much more sensitive. This is not an expensive harp, but this is a very nice harp. My harps can't compare to that type of volume, can't compare to that type of sensitivity. Most Chancellors you get, they're not tuned. This one I got tuned, and he tunes them with a solder ball. And I might try that for in the future, might try tuning with a solder ball, but for right now I'm just going to be getting the hang of making harps. Let's compare it to a Blackfire A3 by Zalagi as well. Ultra sensitive, very nice playing harp. To a Tatarstan. Let's go ahead and let's try that tongue technique with mine. Compared to the Tatarstan standard. Ultra sensitive. My harps are nowhere even in the same ballpark as this harp. Very, very good. So I have a long ways to go, but every week I'm having some progress, and that's good. Every week I'm taking a step in the right direction, and I think my next progression, besides getting the reeds cut better and getting everything evened up, is this here, is bending my harps on the diagonal and getting rid of the twist. Now I have a lot of twisted harps here left, and I'm going to go ahead and put reeds in all of them as well and see what happens with them. But I think the progression for now is bending harps on the diagonal. It's once you figure out how to do it, it's much easier to get everything even than evening out a twist. And I don't know if that's because the twist adds extra stress to the metal and it flexes different there, and there's just so much to even up. But that's going to be it for this. I'm going to just keep my head to the grindstone and just keep making harps and keep trying to get better every week. And there's going to be lots of harps, actually. Harp making. I've got so much footage right now. I haven't even edited them all together and got them on YouTube yet. But be on the lookout for my harp making videos. I've got videos of me squaring up embouchures and reeds, evening out harps, taking harps that are bent all crooked and turning them into a much finer looking bent harp. Footage of me filing in channels for reeds, crimping reeds, grinding reeds as well. And just be on the lookout for all that, because I'm going to have a few videos up, or try to have. My life's very busy with work and jaw harping and jiu-jitsu and this and that. I'm going to try to have a couple videos out every single week of me playing harps, of me also making harps. Should be in the next couple weeks getting a Zalagi by call in. That's going to be a good harp as well. But be on the lookout for the videos. Well, that's going to be it for this week's progress. Like, share, and subscribe for more harpery. Harp out.